Yeah, same.
We're going to take a brief little aside and watch the television. So we're dropping your opportunity to use, and then we'll get back to the hard bit. I want to show you all what someone was asking me, well, how do you press your nags if you don't strip them? You make little tiny positions like this, which we'll show momentarily. You make a lot of little positions as neg when you're evaluating, and you prepare to customize them to each round. And so you have 4 or 5. So like here's one. A consequence on forcing us to be in a society of lawyers to protect our rights because of how convoluted the affirmative team's point is on this contract and that contract and the other. A consequence on forced vaccinations, that your body is your property and the needs of the public. And so we have just like several positions that we like. As negative, a counter value we like, freedom, decent counter value, sort of for both sides. And then we put them into the round as needed. So now I'll show you a final example in my example cases box. I believe I have to connect to my phone actually. I'll put my phone.
I like how one inbox you have 8 unread messages and the other like 550.
Yes, it's frightening. So this is personal, and that's business. I get probably 650 emails a day. It's nutter butters. Okay, drop. And these are just 2 of my 6 inboxes. I was going to show you some examples. Where's my, here it is. Okay, here we go. So here's a app case from times of yore. What I like to do is have on one page, like a little contention. So this is a position that I have. This is an app, by the way. Here's another one. Here's another. Here's another. Okay, so this case I have 4 contentions that follow the definitions and thesis. This is the same. So depending on my judge, audience, room, opponent, I'm going to choose to mix and match different ones of these. So U.S. attitude, foreign attitude is short-term. Preemption characterizes U.S. foreign policy. Unilateralism ignores established diplomatic institutions. And U.S. diplomacy is disguised military action. If I'm a baby boomer judge, I'm not using that last one. If I had a young person judging, fresh out of college, totally, all day. So I'm mixing and matching my contentions. I'm not creating a script. But I have parts of it that I guess you could consider our script. It's modular or flex. So you have a flex neg or app, yes.
How many applications do you try to have just regular message?
I try to say probably 4 to 6 is a regular neg speech for examples and illustrations. But there's one thing I try to do that's more important than the number of applications, which is I try to have what we call sticky applications. If you've read the book Made to Stick, Chippendale Heath, anybody read that?
What's the name again?
Made to Stick by Chippendale Heath. Okay, it is the best. I like to get outside of the beta land for most resources. This is the best communications book out there. And it has 6 points on what makes communication sticky, which is their idea of how do you remember something later and care about it. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. Success. Great book, and it's hilarious too. Yeah. So I try to have sticky examples. So things that I like to do are talk about something nobody else has talked about. Last year, what was the resolution last year in LD?
There were 2.
What was number 2?
How can I not?
Was the environment? Yeah. Okay, so my 2 applications that I considered highly sticky were sort of Freakonomics, kinds. One was about this elephant population in 2 different African countries, and it was in decline in the 70s. And one country decided to regulate. No more hunting of elephants. Population control. Other countries said, we're going to allow ownership. Villages and villagers can own the elephants. They can kill them, eat them. Population increased. Because when you care for something, you want to replicate it. When the state owns it, tragedy of the commons. That's a sticky example. Nobody's ever heard of that. I had one that was similar about tracking whales and whales shares and the amount of money spent on Save the Whales campaigns versus how much whales are actually worth, which they priced, which could be used to buy whales if it was allowed, because these whales are mostly tracked and stuff. Really interesting. So the judge walks out of there thinking, oh, Isaiah informed me of something I had never heard of in my life before. To me, that is a crucial moment for your example of applications, is that you have researched something they've never heard of. Yes?
How do you find examples like that? You just do a lot of research?
A lot of research.
Okay.
Yep, and enjoy the random research. So I call it the 90-10-10 rule, that 90% of what you read, you never say. And 90% of what you say, you never go in a debate room. But it's all super useful to you because the language improved, and then you end up with these weird examples out of nowhere. Like, I'm working with a STOA team on their methyl mercury case, as you can tell. And we actually have a sticky file, I think. Yeah. So we just started a sticky file for the year. So I told you about tuna and his journeys already. But we found this in one of the journal articles we were looking at. This, in the 3rd century BC, the Chinese emperor Qin Shi Huang, to achieve immortality, got himself fed mercury, and then he died. But he thought it was going to give him eternal life. And then we were just sitting there, we're like, hey, Ronald Reagan, Alzheimer's, mercury, I wonder what they ate. Found some lady who has categorized the food that presidents eat in this thing called Food Timeline / Presidents. Turns out they're especially fond of broiled swordfish, napped with lemon butter, and Mrs. Reagan is fond of salmon mousse, grilled halibut steak, broiled trout with kiwi fruit, and swordfish veronica. That's sticky. It's interesting and off the wall, but you kind of encounter it because you're researching. You'll never have a sticky file if you purchase research.